Welcome. We're here with Lewis Gump, author and just an all-around great guy. He's been an entrepreneur as well as an entrepreneur. So, Lewis, I think you've got such cool perspective with that experience. I'll brag on you for a minute, right? You've built these cool, trailblazing mobile apps in early days of mobile apps at Weather Channel and CNN. You've been a GM at Cox Media, and you've also served with the Mobile Marketing Association most recently as the global chair. So you're building the community. You're doing what Seth Godin talks about in tribes, right? You're connecting people so that way your work can be amplified. Congrats as well. I saw just today on LinkedIn that your book has gotten is a finalist. So we're rooting for you, a finalist in the Indie Book Awards. So congrats to that.
Thank you. I'm really excited, and I feel so fortunate to have worked with many great people and great companies over time.
Your book looks really good too, man. That I love that metallic sheen on the egg there. How did you pull that off?
Thanks, and I appreciate your showing that so you can really get a
Yeah, it's
sense of it
cool.
as if you were holding it yourself. We were talking as a team about the book production, and we wanted to have a really great reader experience, and the starting place was looking at the content of the book, and then based on the content of the book, we came up with the layout of the cover. And once we talked about the layout of the cover, the question was, how do we really make this just almost leap off the page and really
Yeah,
show what we're trying to convey with this idea of hidden value inside? And I give
yeah.
credit to our graphic design team who came up with the idea. I as soon as I saw it, I thought, oh yes, let's do that.
Well, it really is beautiful. I mean, it's stunning, and it is part of why I decided to start sending your book to all of my clients because it looks really good. And I know a lot of people they might, they get a free book in the mail, they might not read it, but it's gonna look good and it's gonna set a good impression. I guess I am judging your book a little bit by the cover. But as you've joked about, right? Like my copy here is just marked up. Like every page, I've got notes and notes and one thing that jumped out to me as well, which I wanted to ask you about, and this is my first little funny question for you. What does your wife think of the dedication of the book? I mean, harsh.
She was a big fan. Uh,
Okay, okay.
I assume you're speaking to the dedication to the entrepreneurs.
Yeah, it's dedicated to entrepreneurs. Usually it's my wife, my kids.
I realize I actually did think about that. There are so
I'm
many
sure you did. Yeah,
people, and what I realized is that the lives of our family, our experiences have been so affected by teachers and coworkers and friends in the industry and beyond. And as I was talking about it with her and with others, what became clear is that I was really writing it for the entrepreneurs. And
yeah,
so
yeah.
that dedication is a literal translation of the reason the book was written, which was, hey, there are all these people out there doing amazing work. Now, just to redeem myself slightly, in the acknowledgments,
Okay, okay,
she's
okay.
well represented.
Okay, good, good. Well, I did make it to the end, so I've got your acknowledgments there. My read on it, and the reason I brought it up is because I experienced your love and your empathy for the entrepreneur as really authentic. It's really genuine, and it goes so far as to make it into the dedication. I thought that was really important that you did that. I was just trying to make a joke there, but you talk about character and what is their first motivation, why are they getting into this, integrity, how to lead well through challenge and change in difficult circumstances. I thought was a neat theme of the book that you hit right from the outset with the dedication.
Thank you. And it truly, it was just a literal translation of the intent of the book, with the idea that there are all these brave, smart, talented people who are actually in the proverbial arena. And I have so much respect for this group of people. And I've certainly experienced that myself. But even more importantly, knowing so many people who have done similar work and really made it happen.
Yeah, Absolutely. So you were born and raised in Johnson City, Tennessee. I don't know if you know this, but it was made famous, of course, by the song "Wagon Wheel."
Yep,
That's how
thank
we
you.
all know Johnson City, Tennessee. Now you're forever on the map. And then early career, you spent some time teaching overseas. Is that right? In Asia. And this is maybe just kind of a shot in the dark, but is there any connection with that early experience, kind of teaching overseas, that is connected to your sense of humility and empathy and integrity that you express in the book?
I'm sure it's connected, and even more broadly, that teaching experience was transformational, and the opportunity to live in Taiwan and also to study in Beijing and Nanjing along the way, so in different
Wow.
places, and to experience the perspectives of many different people. And one of the things that you pick up pretty quickly is that there are a lot of different ways to look at kind of a similar situation. And if you spend some time listening, you can learn from people in different ways.
I love that. Well, I think you have a teacher's tone and kind of a teacher's heart in the book. And a friend of mine, fraternity brother of mine, actually just read a book called From Strength to Strength. Have you happen to come across this yet? But it talks a lot about in our earlier years, we've got fluid intelligence, which is great for lots of things like innovation. And then we start to get this crystallized intelligence, which I think is a very kind way of saying sort of wisdom. And one of the best ways to express that crystallized intelligence is through teaching. So I have to imagine that was a neat experience for you to get to pour your energy and your passion into teaching through this book.
Uh, that's exactly right. And I hadn't seen From Strength to Strength when I started writing this book, and someone
Okay.
recommended it to me along the way.
Yeah.
And as I read through it, I think Brooks, yes, he kept bringing up point after point that really resonated for me. And one of the reasons that I think his book is so powerful is because it essentially describes a path that a large portion of people can really relate to and learn from. And another one is that it helps people to value different things and changes at different points in their lives and careers. And if you do that, you realize there isn't this single unit of value. Or you were talking about fluid intelligence versus crystallized intelligence and these ideas. Like, both are valuable, many other things are valuable, and combinations are valuable. And then each individual has an opportunity to figure out what resonates most for them at a given point in time.
Yeah, seasons of life and areas of gifting and yeah, I found it to be a little bit of a bummer to read in my mid 40s. It was challenging in a good way, and I think your book was challenging in a great way too. Tell me about do the right thing, serve our customers, move forward. If there was any sentence in the whole book that like I'd want to tattoo on my arm or write on the wall, that's it. It just do the right thing, serve our customers, move forward. Break that down for me, if you would, and also like, is that a long time slogan that you've had personally for a long time? I just love it.
It is a long time kind of set of reference points, and it developed over a period of years. I don't even know when exactly when I started using that in so many words, but it came together more or less at the Weather Channel for me.
Okay.
And it came after some number of years of being in the workplace, some number of years of learning from others in various situations. And in the case of the first one, I think that's something that applies in all areas of life. To the best of our ability, do the right thing. And, I have to confess that I took it for granted in many cases for a long time. And then I saw people who didn't do that. And in this context, didn't do that in a work environment. It's like, wait a minute, doesn't matter what else you do. If you don't get that right, you're going to be way behind, and a whole lot of the time you're going to be seriously derailed. And then, on the other hand, when you do that consistently, it tends to be the foundation for strong relationships, tends to be foundation for greater results, greater trust, and beyond. And then if you go to the second one, I just remember in particular, for example, in the 1980s, seeing products that were making it into the marketplace that were made by companies that had great brands, but they weren't well made. And I'm going to intentionally avoid naming names here. However, what I realized is that these companies spent more time focusing on messaging than they did on the products and the services. That's a big problem. And it's very difficult to sustain a business over time if you aren't keeping in mind the primacy of meeting customer needs. And then you get into discussions like, well, are you meeting the needs of customers when they express them, or are you anticipating the needs of customers? As I point out in the book, from my perspective, that's a distracting argument. It's a false dichotomy. Yeah, you have to do both at different times. However, ultimately, if you don't keep in mind the importance of meeting customer needs, other things get a lot harder. If you do keep that in mind, a lot of things typically get easier. And lastly, moving forward, especially when you see so much change in industries and so much change in companies, it's easy to get wrapped up in whatever it is that is in the past. It might be something you're really proud of. It might be something that you're frustrated with. It might be something that just is without judgment. However, it's very healthy from my perspective to honor the past and always move toward the future. And so this idea of moving forward is a reminder to make sure to keep looking in that direction, and then finding new opportunities to create value, to create products, to create services, to build relationships, and to contribute in community.
Love what you're saying about moving forward, serving our customers, doing the right thing. For an entrepreneur, there's not a lot of accolades that perhaps the entrepreneur might get, as you point out in your book. There's not a lot of emphasis on kind of wellness and self-care. Do you find that entrepreneurs, I love the charge of move forward. It sort of implies move forward is that you might consider the fatigue of not moving forward, right? So tell me more about kind of this idea of self-care for the entrepreneur.
Sure. So there's a whole lot that could be said on this topic. And I want to enter that by going to your point about recognition and accolades. Because a lot of the time, you're just kind of chunking it out every day. You're getting it done. In fact, in my experience, a lot of the best entrepreneurs are doing their best to position others to get the recognition. And so from my perspective, it's really healthy in that respect to have a focus on contribution. And if your metric is, how can I best contribute to the organization? How can I best contribute to the growth of my coworkers and customers? How can I best contribute to the strength of the brand in a way that's positive for various stakeholders and not just for financial reasons? That tends to produce positive results, and it tends to result in some amount of fulfillment, if that's genuinely what matters to you. And then as it relates to self-care, what I find is that a lot of entrepreneurs also are so dedicated that it's easy to lose sight of the boundaries between the needs at work and the needs in other places. And the other places can include one's own health or that of others around. For example, if you have a team that's proverbially hard charging and that sort of thing. Also, it's easy to underestimate the importance of investing in family and friends. It's easy to say, oh, I don't have time for a vacation. By the way, yeah, I understand that if you go on vacation, when you come back, the mountain of stuff might be higher than it was before. But on the other hand, taking those breaks, they aren't just good for your own health, but they make you more effective as a team member. So there are multiple, and a lot of people know this already, but don't necessarily practice it. And so I think the idea of understanding what it is that, helps you to recharge, and then doing some of that systemically and also opportunistically, both, that's I've found to be very effective for a lot of people I know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that idea of wellness and taking breaks, it's very practical. It's very pragmatic. How do you sustain it? If you can't sustain it, you can't scale it. I know that word practical is so important to you. Do you have any early memories of like where did that come from for you? Of like, yeah, I'm a practical optimist. Was that Weather Channel CNN kind of era that kind of like solidified for you?
Well, thanks for asking. I think there's something, at least for me and a lot of people I know who do this kind of work, that we're just wired that way. It's like
Right.
you want to see some sort of practical result. And it's not just about theory. And by the way, I love theory. I love philosophy. I love talking strategy and ideating and beyond. So, if anything, it's important to have that capability if you're going to do your best applied work. But at the end of the
Hmm.
day, we are trying to accomplish something. We have goals. We have, back to the
Yeah.
point before, we have customers to
Yeah.
serve. And so if the only thing we're doing is batting around ideas, but we
Yeah.
aren't finding a way for the proverbial rubber to hit the road, for the
Yeah.
products to go into market, for the problems to occur, for the successes to occur, then kind of what's the benefit of that for this
Yeah.
type of work? And so I want to be careful. This isn't so much of a universal value judgment. It's specifically as it relates to someone who's in a role of being an inside innovator or an entrepreneur. If you're in that role, then one of the ways and one of the most important ways to evaluate success is: are you growing? Is your business unit growing? Are you helping to facilitate and advocate for change?
Okay. Okay, that's helpful to understand that it's sort of like you're wired that way, and so are a lot of these folks. And
Sure.
we may not be the most comfortable people in a long-winded board meeting or in a bureaucratic governance session, but darn it, we're still going to serve and we're still going to try to help. But really connecting to that idea of larger contribution. But we are kind of get her done people. Um, and maybe that's a part of the Tennessee ethic too. I was down in Knoxville visiting very much a get her done client yesterday, and so that's cool to hear about your experience with that. One other that's a curiosity here, as we're discussing, is if you're a get her done person, if you're a practical, pragmatic optimist, and um, you may find a certain like corporate immunity that may be wisdom in terms of like how those ideas come and they get vetted. What advice do you have for maybe a young go getter who wants to help their organization evolve? How do they do that sustainably?
All right. So,
And I would add to that too. How do they sell their ideas? Right? How do they pitch and do it successfully?
wow, you're asking such great questions, and there's several concepts there. I'm going to try to touch on them. If I miss something, please let me know. First of
Okay.
all, this idea of corporate immunity, it's real.
Yeah.
And organizational resistance to change is really what that's about. And especially because you have people who have established interests, if you have a systemic environment and a mindset where you're welcoming change, typically it's a little easier to affect positive change. But if you have an organization that is, resistant, boy, it can be hard. And I think a lot of people know that and have seen it. If you have an idea and it's like, no, I'm too busy, or we don't do it that way, or we tried it 3 ways and it didn't work, or whatever it is, that it's important to listen to those sorts of things. For example, there may be somebody in the organization who says that, who can teach you. They're like, well, we tried this. However, it's a lot more helpful if you have we tried this, but how about that? Right. So
Right.
continuing to look at other
Okay.
options. One of my favorite quotes is: there's no limit to what you can do if you don't care who gets the credit. And
Hmm.
I think one of the ways that an entrepreneur, especially early on in their career, but also throughout, is if you show that it's not about you, that it's
Hmm.
about the idea and it's about supporting teammates in the organization. In fact, if you can help other people to advance their ideas in the process, it's easier to move ahead.
Uh,
It may be that I have and I just came back from a conference, hypothetically, I'm saying years ago, and
okay.
I heard this idea about mobile advertising. And there's this brilliant way that we can make an advance in mobile advertising so we can generate revenue, so we can invest more in these products. Instead of just going through and saying, hey, I've got this great idea, let's go do that, and making it about me as an individual instead, what if it's presented as, hey, within the industry, there's a trend that's emerging. Let's get together as a team to brainstorm and let the team
Mhm.
adopt it as ours, not mine, and then make it better. That tends to be, more effective as you're trying to not only accomplish things, but build relationships.
Yeah.
And one other thing that I would say about helping things to happen is related to team members and others. If you really understand where other people are coming from, and
Mhm.
especially if you marry that with an understanding of the company's strategy, then it's easier to persuade because you can refer to things that are already widely accepted. Hey, our strategy is X. This idea will help us to add an additional pillar for X. Could we have a conversation on this?
Right. Yeah, you're layering in, and of course, you remember the book How to Win Friends and Influence People, right? There's some one of the methods in there is really listening deeply. It's a very authentic. It's kind of a funny title to the book, but I need to understand what's important to you in order to be successful in convincing you of my idea. I don't care who gets the credit. If I'm able to let that go, then we can all make a ton of progress together. That's really helpful, and I know that must be connected really closely to your idea of credibility that you speak of a lot about in the book. That you can't just go plunk and go plunk down some money and hire the entrepreneur that's going to take over the place. You really do need to cultivate and grow within entrepreneurs who can be champions and trailblazers because they've got the relationships and the credibility to make it through tough times and to sell the ideas originally.
That's right. That carries a lot of weight. These trusted relationships, especially in large and complex organizations. And one of the things that I would add, which is also something that comes up in the book and a number of people have with me about, is if you have someone who's newer to an organization, and sometimes that means you've been there for 5 years, not 20. Sometimes it means you've been
Right.
there for 5 days, not 2 years. Um, so there's different definition of that is relative. But if you have somebody who's been there longer and understands how it works, and you put that person together with someone who is newer, there
Mhm.
are kind of numerous benefits of that, and not just to relationships, but also to results.
Right. I love that. I do often find when we have a new hire, I kind of think of sort of the first 100 days, like you think of with a president. I really want to listen really well because those first couple of things that they're going to say are truly fresh eyes, right? We've brought in a really smart person who's still getting onboarded, but they're going to have a lot um, of new ideas, and I want to respect and honor those as they're kind of fresh into the organization. How would that trailblazing champion entrepreneur internally? How would they best uh, hire, vet, and lead a technology partner like Kiza Solutions? Any just general areas of advice when it comes to, um, we have our internal person who has the credibility, they've built the case, and now they're looking to an external party to come in. How do they successfully do that?
Sure. So, well, actually, I have a clarifying question before answering that, please. And that
Sure.
is, are you thinking more of Kiza hiring people to work at Kiza, or are you thinking
No.
about Kiza serving a customer and kind of onboarding with a new customer, or something else?
Yeah, right. So thinking of some of our clients and some of these folks that I've gotten to know over the past, real 20 years of working in this particular tech stack and coming on 11 with Kiza, um, and they've built up a great plan. They've got an idea that's budding. The CEO is involved, and so they've got a great backing. They've got the financing to get after it, and now they're starting to talk to a couple of friends about, who do you know that we can bring in to help execute. Um, and And when they're on that precipice of kind of hiring a group like ours, how do they do it right? How do they do it well?
So this could be a semester-long class to
Yeah.
do it full justice. It's one of those topics that has many angles to it. However, I'll comment on a handful of them. Uh, First, it's important to understand true capabilities for the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur needs to understand not just what a potential service provider can do, but also that they have the ability to scale. If you have a company the size of Home Depot, let's say, there are different needs to scale if you're going to have a product or service that's deployed to all Home Depot stores than if you have a local or kind of micro regional hardware chain. And so part of that is vetting capabilities. Another one is really the people and the relationship. I think it's easy to underestimate the importance of chemistry. And, some of that is matching with your company culture. Some of that is making sure that you have really a business partner, but in this case, in corporate speak, a vendor. Um, if you have somebody like that coming in, then you want to have somebody who's going to be transparent in describing what they're providing. They're going to provide regular updates. There's going to be strong communication. And then lastly, with a few exceptions here and there that are truly transactional, it's like, look, I just need to buy a truckload of paper cups or whatever.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
Outside of that, I'm always looking for someone who's thinking more about the relationship than just closing the deal. That tends to be a pretty good indicator of where the priorities will be. Occasionally, projects go exactly as planned. Sometimes they don't. In fact, maybe it's the rule, not the exception, that they don't.
Yeah.
And so you want to have somebody who, and really this is best in both directions. You want to find a person and a group and an organization that will think about the quality of the broader relationship between the two companies more than they think about the individual transaction. And when there's that broader minded thought, that multi-layered thought, you tend to get a richer solution and something that's more sustainable.
Love those 3 points there. Thanks for walking us through. And there's some great wisdom in there and encouragement for me personally. It's awesome. Just one last question here that's come to mind is just any other general areas of advice. Let's picture perhaps a young college graduate, and maybe they studied business or they studied even entrepreneurship in undergrad, and they're coming into the workforce. They want to be an inside innovator. They feel like, of all of that incredible list of attributes that you had in your top 5 attributes, they just say, cherry, 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 that's me. Um, what advice would you give for them? I know your kids are about that age too, so how do they get into this world and why?
Well, you already alluded to the first stop for me, which is self-knowledge. Occasionally I get asked the question, can everybody be an entrepreneur? And my general answer is most everybody can be an entrepreneur, but not everybody can be a successful entrepreneur because there's a certain set of characteristics, including the curiosity, the bridge building, the pragmatic optimism, and more that are best suited for people to be successful over a longer period of time. So understanding that is important. It's also helpful to understand whether you're more naturally wired to be an entrepreneur and value that environment inside the company, or whether you're more naturally inclined to be an entrepreneur, at least at a point in time, because this is not necessarily static. So once that's the case, the next is to find something you really care about, and to find some kind of meaning in what you do. If it's just a paycheck, sometimes you have to do that. And by the way, also, sometimes you have to take the internship and just scan copies all day. So it isn't that it's always really exciting, but I think along the way, keep in mind that that there are more ways to learn than just the specific skill that you're doing at any one time. You learn how to get along with people. You learn about an industry. You learn about building relationships with other organizations. And so I would encourage the person early in their career, even if they're cleaning carpets, to take pride in what they do, and to learn from the people around them, whether they're, a person with a really fancy title, and a lot of decision-making authority, or whether it's someone who's very junior hierarchically, especially if that person has a lot to teach. And then I would also advise doing your homework about companies. If you've already got a job with a company, learn all that you can, and don't, of course, go to the website, but talk with some people, ask what they think, ask what the strengths and weaknesses are, ask what the opportunities are. And if you're still at a stage where you're looking for a role, understand the industry as well as the companies in it, and, be open to having conversations. One things I would add there is that people learn in different ways. Some people learn best through reading. Some people learn best through listening in a conversation. Some people learn best experientially by doing. If you understand what kind of learner you are primarily, or if you know that you can do all three and you can just adapt to the situation, then find ways to be more informed with the pure information, but also translate that into your own observations. Use your own critical thinking skills to come to an assessment about how you can best contribute, which leads me to the last piece. We've talked about it already today, and that is focus on contribution. It's easy to get caught up in, visible things that can happen on a day-to-day basis. It's easy to get distracted by the bright, shiny technology object. It's easy to get pulled into various forms of office politics. And what I would advise is, if you start with the idea that you're focused on contribution to the organization and people around you, and then you try to be positive and lift up people the best you can, both when they're in the room and when they're somewhere else, that's a really great way to have a promising start.
Love that. That is so cool. I think that must be really on the mark for that young emerging recent college grad, in part because you know so many in your own household here. So it's very cool. I really want to honor you for setting aside the time and doing all the hard work for producing this unique work. I believe that it's going to be very helpful to people, not just with the wisdom that you impart with your crystallized intelligence here, but also that it's going to make people feel good. And people who have been blazing the trail for a long time are exhausted, in my experience, and they need support from people like you, and hopefully people like us as well, to come around them and tell them, you can do it. You're on the right track. Keep going. And there's others like you. There's a tribe out there. And what is the saying is, people don't remember what you told them, but they remember how you made them feel. I think you're going to make people feel a lot of relief and a lot of encouragement through this book.
Well, thank you, Bill. I really appreciate it. I feel a sense of mission around this, and picking up on one of the things you just said. There are a lot of people who are doing this type of work. They're very dedicated. Yeah. They're catalysts for positive change. They're creating value. They're lifting up people around them. And I've worked with numerous people who are doing this type of work, and it was just clear to me that there are some ways to take successful people and add to that. And there are also ways to decrease the likelihood that we're going to make a misstep just simply because we haven't been there and done that. So hopefully this book, especially with the wisdom that's included from other people I interviewed and is gathered together, hopefully this will be a helpful resource.
Yeah, it is a huge contribution to the knowledge base. So thank you for that. So it's lewisgump.com, and you're available on LinkedIn as well, and incredibly helpful for me personally to get connected with you and just to learn from you and get encouraged. So I appreciate it so much. Thank you very much.
Well, you're welcome. And thanks, Bill. You got a great thing going, and appreciate your taking the time.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you.